Welcome back to the Great Detour. Today we're talking about grief. Yes, the heavy stuff, but we're also talking about creativity, community, and the surprising ways we can carry loss without letting it completely consume us. My guest is Kera Sanchez, a high school dean, mother of two, Navy wife, and the founder and editor-in-chief of Get Griefy Magazine, a platform that's changing the way we talk about and live with grief. Kera joins me to share her story of navigating deep grief while in the middle of new motherhood, and how that led her to create something that's helping others feel seen, supported, and a little less alone. Her approach to grief is refreshingly honest, often humorous, and deeply human. But before we dive in, if this episode resonates with you or you've been finding value in the show, it really helps if you take a moment to review or give a 5-star rating to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. It's a small gesture, but it goes a really long way in helping more people find these conversations. And with that, let's get into it and let's get a little griefy. Welcome to the Great Detour. I'm Jess, your host. In this podcast, we talk about life's unplanned paths, those experiences that challenge and transform us in ways we never expected. Through honest conversations, my guests and I share inspiring stories and practical advice to help you navigate your own journey. I hope these stories inspire you to trust your path, embrace change with resilience, and step into your most authentic, empowered self. Kera Sanchez, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm excited.
I am so excited. I cannot wait for you to get griefy on the Great Detour. I, too, have been looking forward to this conversation, so thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
I love that we met on Instagram. I think you had followed me first, and then I looked at your page, and as soon as I saw it, I was hooked. Number one, because you're absolutely turning your pain into power, and that is a love language of mine. But number two, you have such a lighthearted and, dare I say, irreverent approach to grief. It's just so different than anything I've ever seen. It's humorous, it's refreshing, it's real, and it's almost as though you've given grief a makeover and have given us permission to kind of go about it in our own way and do it a little bit differently. So I really love everything that you're doing.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And honestly, that's what I'm aiming to do. So hearing someone from like a third person perspective say that that's what's happening, oh my gosh, like that makes me so happy that that's how you are receiving it. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I think this thing that sealed the deal for me was when you posted a thirst trap of your grief magazine. As soon as you did that, I was like, I need to make this woman my friend immediately. It really did it for me.
Thank you. Yes. You know, we got to make grief sexy, I guess. That's
exactly.
The goal.
So you are recording from your school right now?
Yes, I'm in my office. Yep.
So you're a dean?
I'm a dean, yes. I'm an attendance dean. However, I do sometimes have to jump on the saddle for behavior issues as well. I guess attendance technically is behavior if you're skipping class or you're constantly tardy, things like that. But so much of my job does revolve around identifying why kids are not going to class. And it's kind of ironic that a lot of the reasons why are stemmed from grief-related reasons. So I think in a weird way, it's been a blessing in disguise to kind of jump into this role and evolve into this role. Because for 14 years, I was a classroom teacher, but here I am dealing with this now. And while some days are funnier than others in terms of the shenanigans that are going on here, in all seriousness, I think it's good to have somebody that understands and can relate to them through all of the pain and the issues that they're dealing with. But also, I feel as if I need to be a guiding light to them that although they have this pain, that doesn't mean they can shut down. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't do what's best for them in the long run. So it's like having those real deal conversations, with these kids. And I think that's what they need.
Yeah, no, I think that's amazing. And thirst traps and podcasts, you are the coolest dean I've ever known. They did not make them like that when I was in school.
Right? I feel like people have an image in their head of a dean, like the Breakfast Club, that guy, I think he was actually a principal, but yeah, I think that's the image that people have in their head of what a dean is. And I think it's so different than that, but yeah.
You're absolutely defying that. So you founded and you're editor-in-chief of Get Griefy Magazine. Mm-hmm. You are a dean, you're a mom, a Navy wife. How do you juggle all of this without losing your mind on the daily?
Well, so I think you definitely have to compartmentalize and make space for each thing and try the best that you can to focus on what it is that you're doing in the moment. For me, though, the problem is with Get Griefy stuff, my mind is always turning and there's always like the content is always contenting. So it's hard for me to shut that off sometimes. But if an idea comes to my head and I can't do it in the moment, then I just write it down and I'm like, I'll come back to this later. But definitely just trying to, when I'm at work, focus on work. When I'm with my kids, focus on that. And so just creating a soft set of boundaries around each thing that's on my bookshelf and taking that book off when the time allows for it is, for me, what's helped with the juggling of it all.
Yeah, that's great advice. I struggle with it too, but I really think there is something to being present in whatever it is that you're doing at that moment. I have a tendency to try to multitask and then I end up getting pulled in 18 different directions. So I need to take a page out of your book and try to compartmentalize a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd love to get started and just talk about the origin of Get Griefy. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that you didn't have a grief magazine on your vision board growing up. So
no, absolutely
I'm curious, I'd love if you could rewind and take us back to the experience or experiences that you had where you got acquainted with grief in the first place and were initiated into your own grieving process.
Yes, 1,000%. So I lost my mom in June of 2022, and the entire circumstance in which she passed was extremely peculiar because she was on vacation when she died, and it was completely unexpected. She was 57 years old, and she was one of the most alive people I've ever met. She was just so vibrant and so busy and constantly doing things. And so in my head, in her obituary that I wrote, like, how do I grapple with the fact that the most alive person I've ever met has died? And, other things, I was in the hospital. My daughter had just been born. She was born a month early.
Oh, wow.
So I was in the NICU with my daughter when I got the news. And ironically enough, it was during COVID. I had COVID. My husband had COVID. So they wouldn't let my husband into the hospital when I was giving birth. And I ended up having an emergency C-section. And as a support person, we called my mom because she was COVID free. So she was there literally like 5 days prior to her death, meeting my daughter. And then the next day she was like, all right, well, now your husband can come up and I'm going to go pack and I'm going to leave. And, we were texting and calling, but, I never thought that, when she was walking out of those doors at the hospital that I was never going to see her again. So just the entire situation, I was thrown in quite literally into the deep end when I wasn't ready for that. I was afraid of death. I was afraid of dying. I remember 2 years prior to that, another person in my life had passed, my grandma, who I was very close with. And I vividly remember going to therapy and I had a fear that she was going to die. I knew she was going to die. And it was almost like this feeling of, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this when it happens? And I just remember seeing grief and loss and death as something that was just so incredibly negative and scary, and I didn't want to touch it. And so this time around with my mom, it was, again, just so overwhelming and being thrown into the deep end. And based off of the way that my mom lived her life, I just knew that I didn't want to continue on the path that I was on, where I was just truly drowning in my sorrow and how much I felt like I drew the short stick. Like I felt like I got the short end of the stick on that one. So eventually I think that through creativity, through expression, through connecting with other people online, I knew that grief needed a platform and it needed a space that didn't feel as coddling, as stuffy. I wanted grief to blend in with my life, not my life have to blend in with grief. Like I was like, no, I'm the captain now. Like I'm in charge. And so for me, that was a healing mechanism and just a way to learn how to live without her and learn how to live with grief that's always going to be a part of my life. Like I knew that I had to do that in order to move forward, right? That's the thing that I think a lot of grievers have trouble with, is that moving forward piece. And so that's kind of like, long story short, that's where it got started.
Yeah, like you absolutely were thrown into the deep end. And so it was completely unexpected. She didn't have any health issues or anything like that.
I mean, she was having like a cough that was it wouldn't go away. But like, we never thought like, oh my gosh, she's going to die from that. We're just like, oh man, like you can't shake that cough, huh? You know? And so to just get that phone call was just so startling, so jarring. And it was just like, wait, what? Like I think processing that was one of the hardest things because I had just been in communication with her. She was just there for one of the biggest events in my life. And to juggle happiness in one arm, like a baby, and then like, you're never going to talk to your mom again in the other. I was like, what is happening? Like, it's almost like your brain cannot truly process all of that at once. It was a lot.
It's probably like you blew a fuse almost.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those early days, I look back at it and I'm like, damn, how did I do that? And the only answer is just like, you take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
You just have to do like the next thing, and then you do the next thing. And
that's what I was going to ask you. Like in those early days, like how did you show up for your newborn and your family? I guess, yeah, like you said, it's just doing whatever it is that next task is in front of you and achieving that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like you were never going to get out of the grief?
Yes, I think that was a fear that I had because so much of myself, it's not like I also wanted to die, but I wanted to be where she was, if that makes sense. And so I just remember thinking, like, how am I supposed to live a life that's full of joy if I'm feeling like this the whole time? And I will say that the space I was in for probably a year, and sometimes even now, is like a liminal space. Like, I feel like there's the land of the living and there's the land of the dead. And sometimes I find myself caught in the middle, in between both of them. And it's hard to live your life when you have one foot in each side, right? And so I think by talking about grief in a way that's more relatable and more refreshing and more on the life side of things, it helps you get back onto the life side. Like, it helps you stay over there. And so that doesn't mean that some days I'm not dipping my toe in this other liminal space that I have been in. But I think spending more and more time in the life side of things is where we need to be because, you know, this is our life left to be lived. We still need to do that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you have a conflict in your head all of the time, just trying to grapple with the situation that you're in. It was almost like a video game. Like, I want to hit the reset button because this is not right, you know? And so learning to pick up where the game left off, I think, is something that a lot of people who are struggling in grief need to learn how to do. And I think that the magazine can help that. And I think that a lot of the voices and the people that contribute, they are holding the flashlight and providing those next steps for people who are kind of stuck in the grief stuff.
Yeah, and I hear that grief, it's not really a process where there's ever an end point.
Mm-mm.
It's something that you integrate, correct?
Yeah, for sure. And like, that's what I mean when I'm spending more time in the life side. But that, again, I still have days and I still have moments where I'm kind of sucked into the other side. And so just learning how to spend more and more time on the side of life and living, it takes time, it takes practice, you have to be intentional about it. It's not just going to come naturally anymore. You have to force yourself to do it. And so when you have examples and other people who are doing the same things, it helps, I guess, ground you to what your intentions are, you know?
Exactly. No, it's always helpful. And that's part of this podcast and why I started it too. We're all going through different things. And when you're in the midst of it, I don't know if you felt this way. I certainly have in my own detours, in my own grief. It's just very isolating. And it's just like you're watching the world go on around you and you just feel like you're completely stuck and everybody else is living their lives. And it's just like, what is happening here? So I find it quite comforting to hear other people's stories, that I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only one who's going through shit. And also just take some notes from what's working for other people and how they got through their own struggles. I'm curious for you in those early days, like, do you have any like hacks or like what were the things, like your go-to things in your toolbox that really helped you when maybe mornings you couldn't get out of bed or you didn't know how you were going to be able to show up as a mom on those days? Were there any things that really worked for you, or tricks or tips?
I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily the most healthy coping mechanism, but for me, having a list of things to do helped me. Unfortunately, just based off the circumstances of the way that my mom passed, it was a process to get her home. And so trying to help with that and helping my dad, who was still in Italy while it happened, that was something that gave me a sense of like small purpose, like, okay, this is something that needs to get done today. And then planning her celebration of life, like just all of the pieces that went into that, the catering, the venue, like all of that kind of stuff. Although it wasn't ideal, and who wants to be doing that, right? No one does, but it gave me a sense of purpose and something that I needed to complete. So I just think as much as it's a little bit of a distraction, it gives you a reason to get out of bed. Like, this is something that needs to get done. So having that checklist, I think, was important in the beginning. It gave me something that I needed to focus on.
Yeah. And I think, distraction gets a bad rap. I don't think there's anything wrong with a distraction. I talk about this in therapy sometimes too. You can't be in the heaviness all the time, especially
Totally.
in the beginning of situations like that, when it's just like hitting you really hard. So I think to lean on distractions or whatever is just going to bring you a little bit of lightness or get your head focused elsewhere, I think is like a really healthy coping mechanism.
1,000%. It kind of goes back to that compartmentalizing thing where you can spend some time with your grief. And I do spend time with my grief daily, but then after I'm done, I, wrap it up and put it back on the bookshelf, and then I move on to the next thing. And so I agree. Like, it's okay to find distraction, because who wants to be drowning their whole day? It's not possible. You need,
can't.
Yeah, exactly. You can't.
And your story is one I feel like we hear about so often, where you lose someone and it's just so unexpected and you thought you would have more time. And for you, has that changed the way you operate in the world, whether it's with your own children or in your job or with your other loved ones in your life, now having this knowledge of just the impermanence of things at the forefront of your mind? Has that changed the way you operate in the world?
Yeah, I do think so. For one, I don't hesitate anymore. Like, if I think of something that I want to do, that thought came into my head for a reason. So I just go for it. I don't think twice. I have inspired action, and I run with it. And I do think that just a lot of the things that I used to preoccupy myself with, I'm like, that stuff doesn't matter anymore. The drama, the superficial things in life. Like, I used to be such a shopper, and that was like something me and my mom used to do together. Like, we were total like retail therapy gals. And while it's still something I enjoy, it's like it doesn't rule my life anymore. Like, I used to get like all of the sale emails on my cell phone. I'm like, oh, this is on sale. Like, I'm shopping today. And I'm like, meh, whatever. Like, so I think there's just like small, subtle changes that aren't anything like groundbreaking, but at the same time, it makes me feel like it's growth. Like, I don't need a new outfit for every occasion. And if my heart is called to do something, I'm going to do it. So I feel like those are the two biggest pieces that for me have changed me a smidge. So
No, I love that. And the shopping thing I'm actually surprised about, because I think shopping, at least for me, it can be an outlet, especially when I'm going through a tough time. It's a dopamine hit. It makes you feel good. So you didn't lean on that. That's very interesting that you went the opposite direction, were more intentional about the way that you were consuming and shopping. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, actually.
I'd love to talk about, I saw in your magazine, you had mentioned that you thought that sorrow and joy were not actually opposites, but in fact, companions. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your thoughts on that and the role of joy in the grieving process.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, again, we can't live in the grief for 24 hours. It's not sustainable. And many of us wouldn't get out of that. Like, we would seriously be stuck. And so I think finding the joy in life, it's the reason that we're here. And we have like some cold, hard facts to face that every single one of us are going to experience grief, and every single one of us are going to die. But that doesn't mean that life isn't worth living. And that doesn't mean that we can't experience some of the greatest moments that we're going to have as a collective. So I just think that so much of our society and culture, like, we focus only on the good, and it's hard for us to face like the things that scare us or the things that make us uncomfortable. But if we take the time to sit with all of it together, we realize quickly, like, wait, no, this is part of the human experience and it's meant to be experienced. And so, yeah, they very much are braided together and woven together. And yeah, I just think learning how to hold both of them would make everyone's life that much more enriching. So I think it's important to touch on. It's important to talk about. And yeah, I just think that as humanity, like we would have so much more in common if we remembered those things.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's so true. And I've experienced it in my own life. Like you need the joy to sustain you while you're going through those difficult times. And sometimes, I don't know if you've felt this, like I will feel guilty for experiencing joy when something's going on in my life or somebody I know is suffering. It's like, oh man, this feels almost counterintuitive. But I think, like I said, you need it to sustain you. And in order to show up for yourself, for your job, for your family, you do need that to fill you up with light so that you can keep going. If you're in the heaviness forever, it's not going to work in the long run.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I just think that if we focus so much on the guilt that we feel when other people are suffering, nothing ever would get done in society. So I don't know. That is a hard thing. And I very much like pick up on other people's energy. And I'm an empath. Like I pick up, like if someone else is having a hard day, like I pick up on that. Right. And so that's really hard to navigate. But I do think that it's important to learn how to just accept that, well, this is their time that, they're struggling, but eventually it's going to turn around where maybe they're having a great day and I'm not. And so I do think it all evens out in the end. And it's just important to honor and acknowledge where everyone's at individually at their own individual time on their own timeline, because yeah, we're all living on our own pace. Like that's just how it is. And so it's okay that other people are having a hard time and I'm not, or vice versa. Like it's part of the experience, right?
It really is. And I love what you said, like we're all going to experience it. And I think there is sometimes a level of avoidance with that. Mm-hmm. I know I certainly have a lot of anticipatory grief.
Yes.
My dad has a lot of health issues. We've been through a lot the last few years, and there is real grief in watching that and knowing that's coming. But it's really nice to have people to talk to about that and to be able, it's something I'm trying to talk about more openly. I just had an episode recently on aging parents, and I think it's something we don't talk about enough because we don't want to talk about it because it's ugly and it's scary and it hurts to talk about. But I think the more we talk about it, it actually gets a little bit easier to manage and to navigate because you realize, oh my God, so many of us are going through this. Yes. I'm going through it. It feels like a little bit on the young side. A lot of my friends haven't crossed into that territory yet. But the more I open up about it, no, there's others who are going through the same thing. And I really do think there's strength in numbers. So I love what you're doing, kind of creating this community where people can come together and say, hey, we're all in this together. And maybe we're experiencing it in different ways. But by sharing our stories, we can all help each other. And I love that.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, no, I always say this. It's not that misery loves company. It's that misery just needs someone to sit with. Right. And so you kind of, when you're feeling down and out, it feels better to know that there's other people who understand what you're going through. Right. Exactly. Because if you have somebody like a friend who has no idea what you're going through, or like they can't conceptualize like what it would feel like to experience the pain that you are. While they may try to help, sometimes the things that they say just end up being not helpful, or you almost learn to resent some of the things that they're saying because you're like, wait, you have no idea. So like you need someone that is on the same like ring of the ladder as you are if you want to feel better, in my opinion. I think that's necessary.
Yeah, no, I think that's so important. You ever feel like when you were in the thick of it that you were too much, or do you ever feel guilty going to people or talking about it?
No.
Or like you should be better on by a certain, like, months later, like, oh, I should be over this by now, or...
You know what? No, I never really felt that. I will say though, what's very ironic is that my husband also lost his mom at the same age. She was also 57.
Oh, so young.
It's really strange. She died about a year and a half prior to my mom. And I think what made our situations different was that my mom was sudden. Like it just happened out of the blue. One day I woke up and I got a phone call where his mom had cancer for 2 years and he slowly watched the progression. And so I feel like in that instance, I never felt like I was too much. He was always there for me and would always comfort me and things like that. But I think sometimes, again, his advice, it came off, we weren't on the same ladder. We weren't on the same situation. And so it was really hard for me to internalize some of the things that he was saying, because in my head, I'm like, well, you got to say goodbye to your mom and you had those conversations with her. And I feel like you almost had closure, where for me, I didn't. And so again, I think it's, you are never going to feel too much if you are around people who have been through something very much similar to you have. And that's why it's so important to find a community and find other people who have been through things, because it just normalizes your experience and it makes you feel like you're not too much, because yeah, what happened to you is too much. That's what's too much, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm curious if there's anything that like people have said to you that you're like, this is the worst thing that you could say to somebody who, I'm sure there's a lot. Because some people I think don't know how to show up and they just say things and then you're like, no, I don't need to find the silver lining right now, or I don't need, so I'm curious, like, what were some of the things you heard where you were like, man, that's not the right thing to say right now?
I would say just, I think a lot of people who had also lost a mom would say to me like, yeah, like, I lost my mom too. And, you'll learn to live without her. And like, I think that was totally well-intentioned and I get it. Like, yeah, I am learning to live without her, but like almost hearing that was like losing her all over again. It's like, oh, I have to learn how to do every single aspect of my life without my mom. Like, thanks for that. Like, so, and I don't want to have to learn to live without her, And so I think just things like that where people are trying to help kind of push you along. Although, again, it's super well-intentioned. It just, in the moment, especially early in the grief, like anyone that tries to make you feel better, it's almost like, no, I don't want to feel better. Like, I just kind of want to feel like what I'm feeling right now. So.
I love that. No, I completely agree with that. And I've had to catch myself because I am an inherently positive person and similar to you, I'm an empath. So I feel everybody's pain and I just want to make you feel better. But I've been told by a few friends, I've taken the feedback, but like sometimes people don't want to be encouraged. They just want you to sit with them and hold space for whatever it is. So something I am actively working on is just not giving advice and not giving like all these doses of positivity, and just getting curious about how they're feeling, maybe asking them how they would like to be supported or would need to be supported, and just kind of being an ear and a shoulder that they can lean on.
Totally. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, it doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be witnessed, and experienced. Yeah,
exactly. So where are you, years out now in your grieving process? Like, what does that look like for you? And like, also, how would you even define grief? I feel like so many people define it in different ways.
I feel like grief for me, the way it feels is almost like a homesickness. Like you're longing for a place that you can't be in. And so for me, like that place is spending time with my mom or experiencing things with my mom, and I can't be there. And I just like long for that. But where I'm at is I find myself wanting to live the best life that I can for her. And also, again, like going back to, she was like the most alive person I knew. And so whenever I feel discouraged or frustrated or stuck, like I remember that who my mom was, like who raised me. And I know that she would be like, put on your big girl pants, like, let's go, And so that's what I try to do. And it's easier said than done some days. And it's not like I'm in the acute stage anymore where I'm crying all day, every day, but I still have moments where I'm like, damn, this sucks. Or like your brain almost tricks itself. So, I'll be driving home from work, and my mom was also an educator. So we used to like always talk on the way home and like vent about our days. And especially if I have a peculiarly like just crazy bonkers day in the office, like my first impulse is to grab my phone and call her. And I'm like, oh, I can't. And so I think I'm in the phase where I've accepted it, but sometimes my brain forgets about it. And so that's where I'm at. But it evolves, it really does. And it changes all of the time. And it changes based off of what I'm experiencing and how much I wish I could share that with her. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm at, but it changes. It does. It evolves.
Yeah. That's what I heard. It's never really goes away. I think I saw online somewhere a drawing and it was like grief was depicted like this black circle and then just colorful circles were drawn around it. And it's like, it never goes away. You build on it and your life gets brighter and different things are integrated into it, but it's always there. It's always present. And like you said, I love the description of homesickness. I think that's a really beautiful way to depict it. I've heard it's like love with nowhere to go. And I think it's just, like a heartache, just like a dull heartache and sometimes it's more acute, but it's just something that you integrate into your life.
Yeah, no, my favorite visual that I've used to describe it too is that like in the beginning phases, you have a bookshelf. I love the bookshelf like analogy, but like at the beginning, the only book on your bookshelf is this big, thick, black grief book, and it's so heavy, and that's the only thing you can focus on. But as you live your life and you continue forward, you're going to incorporate other types of books and pictures and trinkets and knickknacks and like tchotchkes and like all these different things are going to get slowly incorporated back into the bookshelf. But at the beginning, that is the only thing on your bookshelf. And so you have to learn how to like put everything back on to the bookshelf again. And so that book will never leave. It's always going to be there, but there's other things that are decorating around it that will distract you from the big black grief book.
Yeah.
So
it's a process too, just like with anything. I think sometimes I'm like this because I'm such a type A and I just want to control things all the time and for them to be completed on the timeline that I want. And this is just one of those things you just got to ride the waves and who knows how long you'll be in the thick of it for, but it's just I think an element of trust that you will get out on the other side and it won't always be that intense forever and just leaning into the pain and really feeling the feelings, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So at what point did you make the shift from being in your grief, really being in the pain, to taking that pain and creating something bigger that can help other people? Because I know you did the magazine, but you also have a journal too, correct?
Yeah. So the journals were like my gateway drug. So I was just like pondering and ruminating so much on the fact that, dang, like my mom just died suddenly. Like if I dropped dead today, my daughters would be devastated and they wouldn't have all of the tools and the words of advice and wisdom from me. And so that's what I aimed to do at the beginning, was create a journal where people could leave behind notes of love, advice, and support for their loved ones. And I remember like going so hard on content and on social media, like trying to get the word out there that something like this existed. And it was hard. Like people were like not open to wanting to talk about those types of things because it's like a hard conversation to have, like thinking about like your own demise, right? And so not a ton of people were super like jazzed about wanting to have these conversations. But what ended up happening is I found a bunch of other people who were in this like grief space. And I was like, oh, like let's be friends, like let's talk. And I slowly learned to realize that there's like a griefstagram, like there's like an Instagram like of griefy people, right? And I was like, man, all of these people are doing like really cool stuff as a result of their grieving process. And so the way I pictured myself is like, if I'm having trouble and there's other people that are also having trouble trying to like advertise about the things that they're doing and getting their stories out there, like if no one wants to invite us to sit at the table, we'll just build our own freaking table. That's fine. And so that's what I did. Like, let's build something where we can amplify together all of the things that we're working on because it's meaningful and it's really cool and it's healing for others. Like people who are fresh in grief, they need to see people that are like 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out, et cetera, and how they've handled it in a healthy way. And give them a sense of hope back and give them a sense of like, oh, like grief doesn't have to like rule my life. Like it's going to be in my life, but it doesn't have to be the only thing in my life. And so, yeah, I was in the shower one day, this idea came to me and I immediately like got out, threw on some sweatpants and like went down in the basement and started writing my first letter from the editor. And my husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm starting a magazine. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start a grief magazine. He like thought I was crazy. Like I lost it. But yeah, like again, it's one of those things where the idea came to me and I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like it came to me for a reason. So let's roll with it. So yeah.
I love that. I'm a big believer in that. When you get those thoughts, and especially if they're recurring thoughts and they keep nudging you, it's just like, just go for it. Just go for it. And like you produce something amazing. Like this is an amazing magazine. So tell me a little bit more about it and the voices that you're trying to elevate in here.
Yeah. So I would say that the type of person that I'm looking to feature or work with is someone who has done something creative or something that has used their grief in a way that helps others. So different types of nonprofits and organizations, like people who have created a business. Like the whole goal is to just say that grief is going to be a part of our life, but it can also be a tool that we use to become something greater. And so the purpose of the magazine is to inspire people to rethink what grief, like the role that grief plays in their life. It's not just the tears and the sadness and the aching and the longing. It's stripping back the layers of the onion and finding out what's important to you and taking those next steps and those next moves because you realize how short life is. And I just think that as much of a bad rep grief can have, there's so much positive to it as well. And like, I'm not afraid to say that. And so I think that it's really important that the people that also agree with me, like we all band together and we spread this message because again, it's something everyone's going to face. And so why not provide them with a resource that provides them some hope versus feeling helpless?
I think that's absolutely beautiful. And there's just so much in here. I was looking through it before and just people from all different walks of life, all different stories, and a variety of different resources, like resources for retreats and other things like that. So I know probably when something first happens, you don't even know what to do and where to turn. And then I feel like this is like a great, almost one-stop shop. There's just so much in here where whatever you're looking for, I feel like you can find it. A variety of different resources to help you through whatever period you're going through in your life or in your grief journey.
Yeah, no. And like, I don't know, I'm the type of person that I have such like ADD and my attention span is short. And I also think that being a teacher, I understand that people don't necessarily want to be given like a 300-page book on one topic. Like that's overwhelming. So a magazine, in my opinion, it's visual, it's like stimulating. The colors are intentional. Like it's supposed to be bright and vibrant because it's supposed to be a mood lifter. And, you know, you can just pick up where you left off. Like you can just read like an article a day or whatever. And it's just enough for you to feel like you have some tools in your toolkit versus like, I don't know. I personally, I think I would be very overwhelmed if I had like a 300-page self-help book. Like, I just think that would be too much, you know?
I think that's a great idea though, because when you're in the thick of it, like you don't have the attention span to focus on something like that. So it's nice to be able just to like pick it up and read an article or part of an article, and then you can pick it back up when you're needing that comfort. And I think podcasts are great for that too. And I've been going through the different detours in my life, and I just needed a source of comfort. I just pop one in, listen to it for a few minutes while I was making my coffee in the morning. And sometimes it just makes you feel less alone. So I think it's such a great idea. What do you envision for the future of Get Griefy? Any plans or anything that you're jazzed about?
I mean, I just want it to grow. I really do. And I want to get it in the hands of more people. This has been my mission from day one, is to make sure that it's always free virtually, because there are people out there who don't have insurance, that don't have access to therapy and like all of that kind of stuff. And so that's the least that we could offer them, is like something that's virtual. And so just trying to maintain that it stays that way, and then also grow the readership and grow. I have a small business collective. So people that they actually have a business, or they are a grief personality, or they're an author, you know, all those types of things, like they can join me and we can work together and collaborate. And so I just want to continue to grow the community and try to get like in-person events, like all of that kind of stuff. Like it just takes time, right? And it needs to grow. Yes. And so this is the seed. I'm planting the seed, and just, I want to see where it could take me. But yeah, I want it to be big.
No, you are a powerhouse. So I have no doubt that this is going to go do amazing things and you're going to go to amazing places with it. So this is absolutely just the beginning.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I hope so.
So where can people find out more about Get Griefy Magazine, the journal you created, and you?
Yeah, for sure. So I am on Instagram. I feel like that's like my number one platform that I use for the magazine as well as my personal grief journey. At Get Griefy Magazine is the magazine's Instagram. And then my personal grief Instagram is at Lemons to Legacies. And both of those platforms have links to the website and ways to get involved and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the easiest way is just check us out on Instagram.
Awesome. I'll link those in the show notes. And yeah, definitely check out the Instagram, guys. It is not at all what you would think for a grief Instagram. No. It's so funny. I love how you always pick, like, you don't have a marketing background, but it seems like you do. You always pick these culturally relevant events and then put a little griefy twist to it. So like Coachella you did something for the Super Bowl and like what trauma treats and sad snacks are you eating? It's just really funny. And I think if you're going through something, like absolutely check it out. You will not be disappointed. So Kera, I'd love to close with one question for you. And that is for somebody who's in the midst of it, in the thick of the grieving process and feels like they might be lost in it and they can't see the light. Do you have any last pieces of advice or thoughts on like a small little step that they can take just to try to start getting their spark back?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's very important, especially in the early stages of grief, to just kind of sit in it. And it's okay to feel stuck and just be okay with that, you know? But at a certain point, you're going to know for yourself, like, okay, I've been stuck for a very long time. And you just have to, again, just do one thing that day. And then the next day, do another. And so I think it's almost like learning how to exercise or lift weights. Like you're not going to become a bodybuilder overnight. And so it's the same with grief. Like you're not going to learn how to lift that overnight, but you're going to learn to lift it if you just do like one small thing a day and learn to build off of that. I think that that's the best way to deal with it and to handle it because yes, at some point, it's not going to feel so heavy and you're going to be able to carry it around, not with ease, but comfortably, right? And so I think that's the goal. And you just have to be patient with yourself, but also learn to push yourself a little bit too. Like don't get too comfortable in the stuckness.
I think that's great advice. It's a little bit of patience, a little bit of grace, and a little bit of a kick in the ass.
Yeah, a little bit of all three. Yeah,
exactly. Well, Kera, thank you again for coming on, sharing your story with such vulnerability. I feel like what you're doing is just really helping people to feel seen and also just to realize that like healing doesn't have to be heavy all the time. For sure, it has its moments, but you don't have to be in the thick of it all the time. You can simultaneously honor your loss, but also create space for joy, for connection, and for hope. So I really appreciate you and everything you're doing. I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to The Great Detour. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love if you could leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does help the show have a greater impact. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have your own detour story? You can share it with me by visiting thegreatdetour.com or The Great Detour on Instagram. Thanks for taking this journey with me.